If you know how to solve a 3x3 blindfolded, then you aren't far off memorizing and solving a 4x4 blindfolded. If you can learn to do that, then solving a 5x5 blindfolded won't be too far off either. But more importantly, I think it's a great step to take to push the limits of what you might have thought were possible, and perhaps maybe snatch some random podium places here and there in competitions that you'd never expect. Anyway, the prerequisites to this tutorial are to know the M2 method, which you can check out here, and also knowing how to use the memory palace technique, which I made another video about up here. Anyway, let's get started. Firstly, the corners. They work in the exact same way. The only thing I really want to cover is parity, which you can do by doing U2 sexy move, and then like the PL parity out for 4x4, and then just undoing them both. So next are the edges, or the wings as they're usually called in blindfolded solving. So for these, the lettering scheme is the same, so A, B, C, D. But as you would have noticed, as I keep going, E, F, G, H, I'm starting with like the rightmost sticker out of the two possible wings, and then kind of going around as per usual. So for instance, going by that logic, this would be D here, but this would be E. So there's only one letter assigned to each edge, which means that you'll never get a flipped edge ever. But the setups are still the same, so the first target we have is D, which works the exact same as it would in M2, except you do a little R2 instead, and next one is E. And you'll notice that by doing those two, you solve two completely different pieces. And moving on, we have N. So in my tutorial, I might have taught like this fancy setup here, but one thing you have to be careful about is that on a 4x4, you need to use center safe algs, and this just messes up the centers. So you'll have to do it like the normie way instead, which is like this. It's a similar deal for stuff like Q. I like to teach this fast like MU alg, but it will just butcher the centers on a 4x4. So you unfortunately have to learn this sort of slow one instead, but it does get the job done. And in order to deal with any of the other targets on this L slice, you basically just set it up to Q. So for example, so A, B, C, just do a one move set up to Q, and then do the exact same alg. And if you get parity, you'll get something like this. And as you probably would have noticed, parity doesn't connect the corners to the wings whatsoever. So an odd number of corners could mean, it doesn't mean anything in terms of wings. So keep that in mind. And for parity, we do this alg. Oops, and then rotates. And that will just fix the M slice, or little R slice should I say, without doing anything else. All the other setups pretty much work the same though. And next up are the centers, which are a completely different piece type. So this I'll spend more time on because it's just completely different. Or not necessarily. I'll explain why soon though. So just perform the scramble up on there, and I'll explain my whole thought process. So your buffer is at UBL, or where A is, and your swap sticker is at where C is. And the method is called U2. Your first target is a blue sticker, so it needs to go to here. So you can probably guess what the first thing you have to do is here. And that's right, it's a U2. So now we have a U2 offset, and now we have to get, so this goes to where O is, up to here, without disrupting the U layer. So see if you can do that and solve this piece intuitively. And if you said little r prime, little d prime, little r and u2, and undo that, then you are correct. Just undoing what that does, it pretty much gets this up to here without disrupting this slice. And as you would have noticed with M2, like all your setups are like 3 moves plus. So that's what you probably need to do here. So I'm doing this first so that when I take this up, it fixes up the U layer and U2, just like M2, and undo. So if you know M2, you'll get the hang of this relatively quickly. So next up we have K, so getting this up to here without disrupting the U layer. Try to pause and figure out if you can do this on your own. And yeah, as you might have realized, you can just do a little D setup to get that to where O is, and then it's the exact same thing. And then you got to undo that. And yep, next up, as you can see, we've solved our buffer because all the blue stickers are solved. So now I'm going to start a new cycle to where H is. So try to get this up to here. And you can do that by rotating and doing this. And yeah, there are like some rotations involved, so it might take a bit of time to wrap your head around, but once you get used to it, it's not that bad. Then we have this one down here, which we can do by, I'm going to rotate to this side and do this. Cool. So next we have V. So in order to deal with the D-face stickers, you have to learn this special alg, and you basically set up to where V is, which it already is the case, and then do this. So it goes like this. And then we have H, which we can do like this once again. And now we have to do a very difficult parity algorithm, which is just U2. You also need to learn two special algorithms, both of which are inverses of each other for the U face. These are like the equivalent to like I and S for the M slice pretty much. So one for B and one for D. So the one for B goes like this. So it probably looks like it did nothing because it's just swapping around a bunch of the blue centers. And the inverse goes like this. So this would be for dealing with D. And just like I and S with the M2 method, if your U layer is a U2 off, then you have to do the other one. So if you had B, you'd do the alpha D instead and vice versa. Anyway, we're going to do a full centers only example solve now. So scrambles up here. Just do it in your orientation. I'm blue top, red front. So you might have to sort of mentally adjust for that. But anyway, since it's a 4x4, the good thing is that we can basically sort of choose any sort of starting orientation we want. So I'm noticing that my yellows, I have 2 yellows on this side and 2 reds on this side. So I can just like do a Y prime just to sort of pre-solve these in advance, which is quite nice. So we started at our buffer here. So this is, so as you also would have noticed, this could technically be like Q, R, S2, like any of them. But for the sake of simplicity, I tend to like going in alphabetical order. So that means I can just keep track of like which one I'm up to with each of my, with like 6 different fingers, which is quite nice. So we're going to start at Q, and then next up we have, so once again going in alphabetical order. So technically this could go to any one of these positions, but I is solved. J is a blue sticker. I tend to skip the U face stickers just to minimize like cycle breaks, because that just means memorizing more stuff. This is also solved, which means that the only option left is L. So we have QL, and then this goes to U because U is available. And notice how I'm keeping track of everything using fingers. And then we have M, and then this goes to the next sticker on the B face. This is solved, so we can't do R. So next is S. S, and now we go back here and go to the blue sticker that we missed out on, so J. So we have to start a new cycle. Oh, sorry, we don't start a new cycle yet. So essentially, regarding the blue sticker, it can be any one of these, like what I mentioned before. So first of all, we ideally want to go to B first, and then C. C is already solved, and then D. And then once these 3 are covered, then we treat it like the buffer piece, which is A. But since we haven't done that yet, we go to B first. So B, and then we skip the buffer sticker, so we go to F, and then this is solved already, so we can't do N, O, G, well, and last one here is T. Skip the blue sticker, or white sticker if you're white top, green front. That's solved. X, H. We have to go back here now to the blue sticker. V, D, and E. And if we hit that, that means since we've sort of covered B and D, this now acts as our buffer sticker. So here you'd think do I have any more new cycles? And I'm just going through everything. I covered everything on the yellow face. Green, I remember that we covered and went back to where this is. Where we covered everything, went back to where the blue sticker is. Same on the white side. Here, I remembered going all the way down to the very bottom. So I think I covered everything. So that's about it. Okay, cool. So now we're going to do a full example solve. So just going for corners, it's pretty straightforward. So like B, W, H, F, U, V, Q. I didn't want to spend too much time on that. But essentially, I chuck all of this into like one or two locations in my memory palace. So maybe B, W, H, F. So there's a bow that's like huffing, and then next in my bed, next to my bedside table, there'd be Uvogen, which is like an anime character, and then maybe he has Q's in his eyes, something like that. But I'd use that for the corners and the wings, which is what I'll go through next. And we have parity, but it doesn't affect the wings in any way whatsoever. So for the wings, we have X, E. So maybe someone called like Shelly or something like that. And then we have B and then K. So IJK. So he's reading a book, and then you move on to your next location perhaps. 2 images per locations, I think a solid idea. And then let's go QRST. So we have T here. That's where O is. So maybe like Totodile from, I think that's a Pokemon, and or Toto from Wizard of Oz. And then we have, that's N, I think. So it goes back to here, and I'm going to take my finger off this. So what you've noticed me do so far is that, so it's like on the 3 blind when I recommend people put their fingers on the left and right layers to keep track of where the pieces are. And just mentally sort of have a gist of what's going on in the middle layer. For 4x4 is like a lot more than 12 pieces, rather 24 or 23 excluding the buffer. So what I recommend doing is, and I read this from some former world record, I think you had a world record in this before or something, but you put a finger on a wing pair or edge pair if you hit one of the 2 edges, and then you take it off if you hit 2 or more. So just going back for what I had, X, E, B, K, and T, O. Went back to N. So for all of these ones, I've only covered 1 out of 2. Here I've now covered 2 out of 2. So I take this finger off and we keep going. So here we have D. I take the finger off here, and then we have D goes to H, and H is where the buffer is. And because of the finger tracing, I already know I have an unsolved piece here, here, and here. But I mean, it's still pretty early on, so honestly, most places won't work. So I'd probably go to A, because I know I just haven't covered that. But HA, and then I'll keep going on. So we have J, L, P, M, and then W is down here, I, and oops, I, that goes back to A. In this case, it's probably a bit more useful because I've noticed that I have a finger here, here, and here. So I might just start at like, maybe down here. So here we have V. So V, take my finger off there, and then F, and then C. So I take a finger off here, once again, C, D, G, R, S, and V. And I was kind of focused on like the whole tracing idea at getting to places, but once again, realistically, I'd be like, as I mentioned before, okay, X, E, Shelly, and then B, K, he's reading a book. Next location, we have Toto, who is, so I'm not used to tracing this way, T, O, and he's maybe throwing a grenade, so nade, and then next location. And then through that, you'd be like, there's 4 there, there's 4 there, there's 4 there. And essentially, on average, you're expecting something like around 23, 24-ish letters total. So if you feel like you're falling a bit short, or if you're feeling you're falling a bit on the shorter end, then there's probably more cycles involved. The fingers are another signal that there might be more stuff to cover. If there are more cycle breaks, obviously there are going to be more targets, more solved pieces, less targets. So try to use all of those to figure out if there's still stuff left to cover as well. That time I could tell just through fingers, which was nice, but that kind of intuition can be useful as well. But I recommend the finger strat. You can also use your, I don't know, feet or something to track the middle layer targets if you're hardcore, but up to you. At that time, I think it was 24 letters total, and there were, I think, 2 or so cycle breaks, which means there should be one solved piece somewhere. I mean, roughly speaking, I'm pretty sure it'd be like fine just based off that approximation. And so basically, like, there can only be like solved edges and new cycles. Those are the only 2 things that can influence the amount of targets. Flipped edges are not a possibility. So if there is a new cycle, that means there has to be 3 more targets. And 27 would seem 24 plus 3, which is the smallest possible cycle, would be 27, which would seem kind of bizarre for this Scrabble, because there are only like 2 new cycles. So I would dismiss that possibility. And yeah, we'll keep going on anyway. So for the centers, I'd like to skip the U face stickers, just because it results in less targets. N, and then we have Q, starting with the top letter and going just in alphabetical order with Spef, so clockwise pretty much. And then we have U, R. So I'll explain once I get through the first 4 pairs actually. And then I, F, and then O, S. So through those first 4 pairs, what I tend to do is form a quick image and I chuck it in front of me. So I do like NQ, I don't use Q, but maybe a Nike shoe or something, UR. So like Ursaring from, or like pointing a finger and going like your or something, which is pretty lazy, but it works. And then that's happening like down here. And then IF is like an inferno. And then OS is an ostrich. There's an inferno and it's engulfing an ostrich next to it. So Nike going like your, and then inferno pops up and engulfs an ostrich. And then we'll keep going on. So once again, just 1 finger on each side, just keeping track of stuff. That tends to work out pretty well. Ostrich, and then we have L, because nothing else here. B. So the rest will just be audio. So lob, skip the UD sticker, H, and we have to go back to the UD sticker here, M, lob, ham, cog, so going back to the U sticker. So lob, ham, cog, and yeah, it looks like we've pretty much covered everything on every side except just the side. This we hadn't covered yet because if you go clockwise, there's still this sticker left. So X, and there's probably something here. Yeah, I think it's T and X, and that would finish things up. Just going through that again, we have the Nike going your and inferno, and then the ostrich, engulfing the ostrich, and then audio, we have lob, ham, cog, shat, X, lob, ham, cog, shat, X. And usually if you do it this way, you'll get around like 5 audio pairs-ish on average. If you get more, you can do visual for the last bit if you wanted to, or just extend it to 6. I like doing 5 because it feels a bit safer, and it's still relatively quick. Cool, so starting out, we have N, so we have this. Then Q is back here. Then U, so set up to V. Then R. Next we have I. Then F. Then we have O. Also, feel free to slow this down if it's too fast. This I've already kind of covered a lot, so I won't go super in depth. And then S. L. And then we had B, but because of the fact that it's the second letter of a pair, and it's one of those, it's kind of like INS and M2, we do the alg for D instead. And then we have H, M, and C, so U2, and then G. And then just the last two, so XT, so set up to V, and then gonna undo, then T. And last target is X, so in order to do this, set up to V once again and do the alg. And then now we undo the setup move, and because it's just a lone letter at the end and it's not a pair, we have to do parity, which is just a U2 at the end. So next up, we're going to do the corners. So this is pretty straightforward, so I'm just going to fly through this. Yep, cool. And in order to deal with parity, as I mentioned before, I'm just going to use the PLL parity alg to swap these two. So it's U2 U R prime U prime, PLL parity algorithm. And then you just undo the setup. And then wings. So these are pretty straightforward as well, honestly. So X, E, B, K. Yep, so it's one of the L slice targets, so I have to do a setup and then just do that bad alg. And then undo, and it should be good. And then we keep going. T, O, N. Remember for N, we have to do it sort of like the normie way. And then D. H, once again, don't use those fancy algs, it doesn't work on 4x4. And then we start a new cycle to A, J, L, P, M, and then W, do boop boop, it's down here, so set up to that case. Then undo, and then we have I, so this you do, so INS function just the same as an M2, so the alg still works. Since it's the second letter of the pair, we do the alg for S instead, which goes like this. Cool, and then keep going. A, B, F, and C, A, B, C. It's on the L slice, so we can do a setup to this place again and do that terrible alg. Cool, and just undo that setup. Then we have G, a lot of targets, but execution is relatively straightforward. S, so just that alg again. And then V. And just for the sake of example, if V was like a lone letter at the end and you had parity, so you'd still do V as per usual, and then you'd get this, and then what you do is just the parity alg to solve that. Anyway, I hope that was helpful. If you did successfully solve your 4x4 blindfolded for the first time, then congratulations. And if not, then be sure to comment down below what you're stuck on and I'll try to help you out. Otherwise, be sure to like and subscribe. And as always, if you want to level up your blind solving game, then I'm more than happy to help and have a chat with you. So be sure to book a call up using the link there or down in the description. But otherwise, have a great day and see you later. Bye.